Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time to talk real estate. Let's talk real estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California, as we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving the market today with the man. Well, he's always looking for the best solutions because he's been on both sides. Barry himself, Barry Saywitz.
Hey, Paul. Good morning. Good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there, and welcoming in 2022 New Year. Happy New Year to everybody. We're back here to do it again. I'm going to call it season 2 of Let's Talk Real Estate. I feel like we're back for another round, and we'll see this year if all of the predictions and prognostications that we had from our guests and myself from last year, if those come true, if they carry into 2022. And no better way to kick off the new year with our special guest, the Honorable Kevin Muldoon, new mayor of Newport Beach and former city council member. Kevin, welcome to the show, and congratulations on your appointment as mayor.
Oh, thank you, Barry. Happy New Year. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I would appreciate you coming on, and as always, we're going to get to it, and let's talk real estate. Before we do, today's shout out, I want to give to all the folks out there in the retail industry who work in the restaurants and the busboys and the waiters and all of that that goes into making retail and restaurants work. I saw it firsthand over the holidays, and I know that a lot of the employers out there are still struggling, and the workers are still dealing with COVID issues and safety issues. So to all those people out there, thank you for what you do, and we hope it continues. And for those people on the sidelines that used to do it, please come back to work. We need your help. So, Kevin, I want to, number one, you're assuming a new role here as mayor of Newport Beach, but certainly no stranger to the city and the inner workings of being on the city council in the past. And so I guess my first question for you is, what challenges does the city face going forward into 2022 in terms of not only the carryover from last year, but things that the city had on its agenda in terms of its growth and prosperity for going forward?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we have is pretty irrelevant to your show. We have a mandate from the governor to entitle or plan to entitle a large amount of residents. And these homes that have to be built have to be planned for first. Whether or not they actually get built, we'll see what the free market does. But we have to plan, we have to submit a planning document to the state to approve, which we have submitted, that's going to allow for about 4,000 units in the city. We're a built-out city, as you know. The trend obviously is to go up. But for us, it's been a little bit of a balancing act. We open up the gates so pretty much anyone who owns land, could be a church, could be a rec center, could be anyone, could submit to us a proposal for X amount of units at that location. And then we're not even saying yes or no. We're just taking them and handing them up to Sacramento for their approval. Whether or not they get built, that's another question, and we can talk about what entitlement will look like. But that's one of our biggest challenges. And most cities are dealing with it. Irvine has a much bigger allocation than we do because it's sort of a per capita allocation. Sure. And all of Orange County is struggling with this as we speak.
And so in that concept, is there an opportunity then to repurpose existing real estate, since especially in Newport Beach, the land is so constrained? And if so, the kinds of applications that you're either seeing or hearing about, where are they coming from? And are they coming from industrial buildings, office buildings, like you say, rec centers? I mean, you can't take away parks and you can't knock down single family homes. I don't know that that's cost effective, but I'm curious where it comes from.
So it's coming from all corners. There's some commercial submissions, especially up at the airport area, we're looking at. Someone could come forward with a plan, and I have not, in all full disclosure, I've not looked at all of them entirely. They're basically looked at by a committee, and then we submit them to the state with the help of our planning department. But it could be, if it's a recreational zone, it has to still go through a green light voter initiative, which unfortunately, if that were to be litigated, it might not be as powerful as it used to be because of the competing interests with Sacramento and local control. Yeah. So, but it's coming from all sorts of locations. Now, it's not really coming from areas that are zoned single-family home, but there's new legislation that says we cannot stop upzoning or making a single into a double or a double into a quadruple. That's another battle. That's SB 9 and 10, I believe, are the numbers that's being followed with the state initiative. And we have a little bit of an overlapping advantage with a local coastal plan or coastal commission. That's sort of a dueling bureaucratic entities, which I enjoy watching because government fighting government's probably good for the people, who enjoy a government that's locked, that has their horns locked. But it's coming from all different areas, and we're surprised to see. It did not come as much from Fashion Island as we thought, but there's some areas along Fashion Island that there were submissions made.
Well, and we've seen it around the airport area where they're knocking down older industrial buildings or older antiquated office buildings and then just going up 3, 4, 5 stories with the apartments. And so you see a lot of that on the other side of the airport where it's Irvine address as opposed to Newport Beach. But I got to believe that the concept of that, well, I'll just call repurposing, right, has got to drive the values of the real estate up beyond what a normal value would be. So if you took an office building or an industrial building and it was valued at X based on its current income or its current value, and then you now look at the value of it based on Y and going up and building apartments, which is the hot ticket in the market now anyway, it ought to command a premium in terms of what's going on, and that would I think, fuel some additional acquisitions for other folks that are on top of that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think that's going on behind the scenes. We might not know about that until someone comes to the counter with a proposal. So what deals are being made on commercial or light industrial, I don't know, but I imagine that's happening.
Yeah, and then I know in the past, in order to be able to do that, to change the use, you'd have to go through either a change to the specific plan or certainly a CUP process or rezoning process. Does that process either A, get expedited or be streamlined as a result of the pressure from Sacramento and their desire to try and push it along?
Yeah, it definitely gets streamlined. We haven't looked at doing a total makeover of our process and zoning because we don't want to. We want to retain as much local control and process as possible. But I know that staff and us on the council and the residents all get the impression that it's not quite the same. You really can't make it too difficult for someone, especially if they submit a plan within the parameters of what's expected. But what's interesting is this is the governor's asked for us to submit these for approval as a planning document. It has not yet come to the point where they have to be built, and so what my planning director often explains to people is that doesn't mean that we can make a landowner submit something to us, which is true. We don't own the land, so
right.
We could plan for all the housing in the world.
But I also would think, and certainly have no idea what the governor's MO is, but if the goal is to push it along and create more housing, then time is an issue, right? And so the goal has to be sooner versus later or as quickly as you could get it done, relatively speaking.
Yeah, well, Sacramento, I think, would like to gut our rules so much that there's ministerial approval that can't be stopped, or there's no planning or public hearing oversight. And then if they're able to do that, they also, I think, would like to take away our ability to plan for ourselves. So we got central planning and we have ministerial approval, I think, are two things that are probably looking at the whole state's looking at, unfortunately, in their future, unless they vote for change.
Yeah, well, in a city like Newport Beach, where you're really land constrained and really conscious about what you're building, how you're building it, and the image of the city, which then protects ultimately the real estate values around it, as opposed to another city that had land that could do it. It's a different ballgame, right? There's this push-pull, I think, between the municipality and the state. Yeah,
if you're Irvine, you're a master plan community. You want it to stay master planned. If you're Newport, we're almost built out, if you will, but we also want to keep our aesthetics intact and our look and feel of the city.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be interesting to watch and see how that unfolds. I want to ask you, switch gears for a second. I want to ask you about the environmental aspects of what's going on. Certainly big deal in Washington. Certainly there are folks that are on both sides of the coin in terms of the environment and how to protect it and clean energy and all of those things. If we rewind a few months back, we had this massive oil spill, which devastated the coast temporarily and then turned out to be not as bad as everybody made it out to be. Where does the city stand with that now? I know it's mostly a government, state, and a coastal commission and all of that, but the harbor was closed. But are we past all of that and we're moving on? Are there still ramifications that you're dealing with?
Yeah, I believe we're past it. They just announced, the task force just announced that the cleanup's complete. You're hearing reports of oil sheens appearing seemingly out of nowhere, and they're not sure whether they're connected to that spill or to some other small leak. So it definitely has brought attention to the fact that whether it's a small leak or a significant one like we experienced, that our coast is pretty pristine and important. And we in Newport Beach, we didn't have much control really. Coast Guard, state took over the process. We had to put a boom in front of our harbor, I believe, and we shut it down for a very brief while. So it impacts our residents a lot and how they feel, but it didn't impact the city as much because it wasn't our jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I know you do consulting for other companies and legal background and all of that. But in today's world, we have a new view on the coastline. So if you do go out in the water or you're up on a hill looking out, you get to see a plethora of ships sitting out there right off the coast waiting to come in. And all those people who are waiting for their holiday presents, hopefully they got most of them, and the last few will get here in the next couple of weeks. What are you hearing, and what is your take on the supply chain issues and whether this is going away anytime soon or not?
Well, I'm in primarily tech, so we don't have a lot of those issues that maybe the manufacturers do with the chips or suppliers do. So I haven't heard much. I've heard obviously mixed finger pointing on who's to blame, whether it's the trucker shortage or whether it's backhaul at the harbor or the port, I should say. I don't really know who is to blame there, but I haven't personally felt the impact except for inflation. I think we're all feeling that, and
yeah.
I do think that's partially responsible for the inflation. And I need to look out there soon, see how many ships are out there. It's been a while since I've seen, but it's
yeah, and
phenomenal.
I looked online. They don't even post it anymore. There used to be like, oh, there's 100, there's 200, and you could follow it. I can only see a couple dozen, but I guess you will see it at the stores, right? At the grocery stores, at the department stores, in our own shopping of whatever wares you're going to buy. I think that my take on it is hopefully it will get better. It seems like China's doing a better job of pushing it our way than we are of getting it onshore and getting it distributed out to the folks. And in the meantime, I read an article this morning. The government's predicting inflation of 4.7%. So then you're back to what does that do to the rest of us out there? Whether that's gas prices, bread prices, car prices. Everything is now costing more. And I know that doesn't necessarily relate to the bigger picture of what you're dealing with on the city level, but certainly as prices go up across the board, if we dovetail back to real estate, we've seen it, right? Real estate going up, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, prices continuing to rise. How does that play into the overall mystique of Newport Beach and what goes on around it?
Well, that's a double-edged sword. We're enjoying increased property values, which means more property tax revenue to the city. We had a $30 million surplus, this last year. So it's definitely impacted us at the same time. We're seeing labor costs go up as employees leave. Obviously, that's in the private sector. I certainly understand and see that in my day-to-day. But at the city, it's tougher to retain quality staff, especially if they can either go private sector now, an option that was not as available as much to public sector, or they go another city for public sector. So we're seeing it in our negotiations with our large labor. We're seeing it with our executives. And obviously I'm seeing it in my private sector life.
Yeah, for sure, as we are as well. And several of our previous guests back before the holidays were living that dream as well as employers trying to hire and maintain people as we go forward. You mentioned the surplus with the city. So is there a game plan for that surplus from last year? And is there an expected surplus going forward for this year from a budgetary standpoint? And what, for a guy who lives in the city and offices are headquartered here, what can we expect to see from the city in terms of improvements, expansion, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so we generally, since I've been elected to city council almost 8 years now, we've taken a large portion we've dedicated to paying down the unfunded pension liability. We're a really old city, about 100 years old, and so we have retirees that are still enjoying the benefits of pension, and that's a good thing, that they're living good lives. So as that debt has slowly climbed over the years, other councils have acknowledged it. They haven't been as aggressive as we have. We sort of pay it down more aggressively, shortening the life of the debt. It's like shortening your mortgage, if you will. it's a little bit of a moving target because people aren't as fixed as a mortgage payment is.
Right.
But so a lot of the funds will be dedicated to paying down the long-term pension liabilities. Some of the funds will go towards capital improvement projects and plans. We have a new fire station that we're going to be rolling out in the peninsula. The mix station they call it. It's the old McDonald's
Yes,
station.
I lived across the street for
That's
many
right.
years. So
And I remember negotiating. I can't tell you in closed session, but it was fun negotiating that deal because it felt like a real estate deal because the prior landowners sold it to us at a premium, knowing that we're a city and that we wanted it. And then we have a concert hall that I actually oppose, but it should be really nice. That's going to be lecture hall, I should say. That's going to be built adjacent to the library. We have a lifeguard, junior guards facility going up soon a little bit lower on the peninsula. So we've got a lot of really lovely amenities and projects that I think the residents are going to enjoy. And they'll continue to enjoy what's most important, those fundamental services like police and fire, public works, that we're able to afford by aggressively paying down the pensions. Paying down those pensions allows us to, maintain a workforce that's confident that if they work with us, they're going to have a retirement for the rest of their lives, and also allows us to pay them a competitive wage because we don't have to worry about servicing that debt.
sure, and it doesn't sound like any defunding or cutting back of police or safety
No,
or those kinds of things. Probably the opposite.
The
right?
opposite, yes. I am always supportive of more peace officers.
Yeah. Super. And then I also noticed there are a bunch of improvement projects going on with streets and landscaping and drought tolerant plants and additional lights to deal with the increase in the traffic. And I'm going to guess those are all on the block to continue to move forward with enhancing the city with those kinds of things.
Yeah, I always, isn't it the worst when you pull up at a stoplight and there's no one there and it's red and you wait there? I would like to see those lights synced more. We're really good, in my opinion, about maintaining the streets and medians and all those common areas. Some of the drought-resistant vegetation and landscaping that goes in, I'm curious how much that's going to change. The big push for that with the big torrential rainfall we recently had. But, we've been talking drought as a statewide issue, and so you'll see, unfortunately, probably another campaign. Brown is the new green, which I don't agree with. It's kind of Orwellian, but we have to educate people on the drought, which is largely the responsibility of the state. But hopefully that's been mitigated by this rain. And I think in the long term, planning is changing to try to be more, quote, green and more efficient with energy and water. So that's maybe not something you see right away, but that's something that we hope to have in our building.
And the one other thing, too, which isn't so much a real estate thing, but I know it affects everybody because I got my notice that the city is embarking on enacting, or I guess trying to enforce or comply with the state's requirement for trash and refuse, for organics and for recycling and those types of things. And I know the city for a long time hadn't been as aggressive as maybe some other cities were in terms of with the extra bins and enforcing that, but now you are.
Yeah, that's tough because that's an expense we put on the residents through their trash bill. The state has these mandates, we call them unfunded mandates. Basically, they say, hey, do this and come up with the money yourself.
Right.
We're fortunate. We have CR&R as our service provider, and they have something called the MRF, which I always joke, it sounds like a guy from Boston. And the MRF is a technology they have that helps sort out trash and deal with some of the green waste, they call. And so aside from perhaps doing a more efficient recycling collection on the front end, how people put it in their dispensary and,
Right.
and on the curb, we have the backside pretty much taken care of with CR&R, although I'm sure they'll be incurring some expense to do it as well. But some of these other cities, they have to go out and get a separate contract and compete for the limited capability that a current trash haul provider has to take care of that issue. So that's actually probably a bigger issue for a lot of cities. Newport Beach is really fortunate.
Gotcha. And so I know that you have had, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say may have aspirations of political involvement beyond just Newport Beach, and whether it's Orange County or beyond that in the future, and certainly wish you well in whatever track you take. But I think to me that must give you a better perspective in terms of having that desire to do that, to look just beyond Newport Beach and look at Orange County. Being a lifelong resident of Orange County and Southern California, you must have seen a lot of growth over the years.
I grew up in Lake Forest. I remember when there was no traffic south of the Y. And even that traffic, I would trade for our traffic any day. Life was a breeze, and we had a lot of orange groves. But yeah, I was raised here in Orange County, and I've lived in multiple cities in South County. My parents moved around twice, And then I obviously, as a guy in law school, wasn't always at the same address. So landed in Newport with my wife at the end of the day, but I've experienced, Orange County, and I've seen the growth specifically in coastal and South Orange County, which is the district I would run in. I've enjoyed it, every city and all the experiences that a young man gets to have by the beach. It's what a great place to grow up. And so I personally think that I could bring a lot to Orange County as a perspective, having known the culture and the values that we have, and having worked on one of the oldest cities in the county as elected official. And for a lot of people, Newport Beach sort of symbolizes Orange County. I often, people get confused who don't follow politics, say, oh, are you an Orange County councilman? When they hear Newport Beach, because it's so synonymous with Orange County. Yeah. And it's because it's one of the older cities in Orange County. I think that's why. So for me, I do think it's a good segue to the position, and the County Board of Supervisors is a very important position. They take care of some of the things that we take for granted, like the coroners, the sheriff, the DAs. I used to be a prosecutor, tax collector, assessor. There are all these local jurisdiction issues that are handed down from the state to be governed at a local level that they take care of, that are very important, specifically, especially law enforcement. In this day and age, it's especially true. And I was talking with Paul a little bit before the show took off, and Newport Beach has the second oldest community behind Laguna Woods, which is also in the district. But Orange County itself is aging, and so we have to provide transportation, safety, protection, and services to the aging population. It's in the best interest of the county to do so, and clearly it's the best interest of the residents to have those protected. And as an Orange County supervisor, I'd protect the financial and law enforcement safeguards we have for the people.
Yeah, and I think the challenges that Newport Beach would face as a city just get exponential when you start looking at the county. And Orange County, in my opinion, still has dynamic growth, still has dynamic diversity in terms of the businesses that are located here and business owners that are located here, and then either drag or bring their companies as a result of it. Those guys that don't need to be here, they leave and go elsewhere. But a lot of people are here because the owners of the companies want to live here. And so the kinds of things that you deal with in the city of Newport Beach just get escalated when you start talking about the greater population. And I think all of that dovetails back into, the real estate. There's a lot of people that look at their own net worth and say, hey, I bought my house for X and now it's worth Y and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Or I bought this piece of property and I made some money. And part of the reason that the value of the real estate continues to go up, number one, because you're land restricted, but number two, because the economy itself is prosperous, right? I remember the days Orange County bankrupt and nobody knew what was going on. And today it's good, but in terms of going forward, I think we need leaders that are going to continue on that path upward and onward and to a better place.
Yeah, and I think Los Angeles is feeling the pain of making a bad decision in who they chose for district attorney. Here in Orange County, the pro-law enforcement candidate's Todd Spitzer, but if I'm a resident of Orange County and I want to protect my property values, I need to know that my home, my property, my family's safe. And so in public safety, I would argue, is number one in protecting property values and safety, and then followed by number two, which is, like I said, is business. So many business people, including my grandpa, who's an Ohio guy originally, who had a facility a manufacturing facility out here in Irvine. That business props up great lifestyle and property values, and we need those businesses to stay, and those businesses also would leave if it became a place that wasn't as safe. So I really think, understanding that the bills have to be paid, so fiscal stability and public safety has to be safeguarded above all else. So those two things are going to keep us in a prosperous position for decades to come.
Yeah, good. And in terms of your prognosis for Newport Beach, for the economy as a whole, going forward into 2022, I'm just curious your thoughts of where you see we're headed. Is it in light of the inflation aspect of it, are we continuing on an upward path in recovery, or is it something different?
Yeah, well, I think we're really fortunate. We've got a large financial industry representative here, a lot of real estate, and that's your field. But I'm seeing increased tech happen, and I think that those sectors provide for opportunities for people to be employed and to not be as negatively impacted by inflation. At the same time, we still have the problem of our labor pool being priced out and having to move inland and commute here. So find the balance is important. I know even in our employment of our own firemen and police officers, they often have to live outside of the city, and definitely, or definitely the city, and sometimes the county, just to make ends meet. So it's in our best interest to fight inflation and to keep prices low. But we are fortunate that we won't be too negatively impacted, in my opinion, by inflation, given the fact that we have sort of a very professional and growing industry here.
Good. Well, I appreciate your thoughts and your input, and feel comfortable that you're at the helm with the other leaders here in Newport Beach. And should you take those leadership skills elsewhere, we wish you well with all of that. But I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your thoughts with us. And Happy New Year and best wishes in the new position.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Appreciate it. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm Barry Saywitz. I want to thank Sophia, our producer, Paul, our announcer, and the entire staff here at OC Talk Radio. As always, we try to look at both sides of the equation, come up with the best solutions for real estate. We will be back next week and the following, so keep tuning in. And to our viewers out there, Happy New Year again, and we'll see you soon.
Well, there you have it. Another reason to tune in each and every week to Let's Talk Real Estate. Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.